So we're going to be focusing on understanding tangible behavior today. Thank you all for joining and welcome to our, I think we're on our 5th webinar in the series on all aspects of early childhood intervention and behavior. All 3 of us directors at Hatch Williams London are early childhood development and behavioral consultants. And Jess and I will be hosting this one, and Erin is also here, but she's currently on maternity leave. So today we're going to be looking at the tangible. We've been covering all 4 functions of behavior. So if you missed the other 3, please check out our YouTube page and you can catch up on those 3. We're going to do a quick recap of the 4 functions, better known as EATS, or an acronym used for it. What is tangible behavior? Examples of common situations, some strategies that you can use to manage these and reshape the behavior. And time for questions at the end. And just to add, if you can have questions along the way, possibly type them in so that we have a bit of time to reach as many questions as we can. We made it a bit longer this week so that we could kind of get to more people's questions. But feel free to add them in the chat as you go. So first of all, when we're thinking about the 4 functions of behavior, we could think of it as everybody eats. That's the acronym we like to use. The E stands for escape. So escape from a demand situation or person. The A stands for attention, where a child may want yours or someone else's attention. Could include challenging behavior. The T stands for tangible access to an object or person, which we'll be going over today. And the S stands for sensory, which we'll be focusing on next week. So when we're thinking about understanding behavior in general, we kind of need to really look at what is driving the child's behavior. So in behavioral specialist term, we call this the function of the behavior. So kind of what those 4 main functions look like. And then on the other side, in the way we like to think about it is the way we can replace that behavior and possibly teach the child a better way of communicating their needs. So we can think about how we can replace the behavior to improve the relationship on both sides. So both on the child's side and both on your side as well. As a few of you, if you've been on our webinars, are aware of, we use this data known as the ABC chart. The A standing for antecedent. So anything that really precedes triggers a behavior, such as a demand put on the child. The B is for behavior, which stands for the what happens. And the C is for the consequence. Anything that follows the behavior, such as a praise or a discipline. And it's quite easy when we're looking at behavior to kind of break it up into the ABC charts to really find a consistent pattern. So you'll find that if you take this data over, say a week, you could really see a consistent pattern in behavior. And that's how you really find out how we can replace and teach the functional behavior. So the specifics for tangible. Tangible maintained behavior occurs with the aim of gaining access to a desired object or activity. Tangibles can be toys, food, computer time, or a turn at a game. And it can even be something that doesn't appear to be very fun. Often it looks like the child is acting out or being aggressive or mean. And the behavior is your child might throw a tantrum in order to gain access to a specific item. And a replacement behavior we could use is teaching your child to request for the toy and to control access to tangibles. So what does tangible behavior look like? And as we've done, we've laid out 4 different examples of how it might look. I think, as a teacher, I think we see this quite often in classrooms, but we equally see these in homes as well all the time with children. So the first example we put is a child screams when a toy or iPad is taken away from them. The second is your child is standing in the kitchen and starts to scream. You get their favorite food out of the cupboard and start offering them to your child. When you give him or her a cookie, they stop screaming. The third example is you're at the supermarket and waiting in a line to pay. Your child asks to get candy and you tell them no. They scream, and in order to get them to stop screaming, you give in and you buy them the candy. And the fourth example is your student screams at their peer for taking their favorite toy or pencil. The peer gives them the toy or pencil back. So when we're breaking this up into the ABC chart, we can, this is one example that we've put in. The antecedent would be you go to the supermarket, your child sees a toy they like and asks you to buy it, and you tell them no. The behavior is your child throws a tantrum in the middle of the supermarket. And the consequence is typically you might buy the toy for them to end the tantrum, which is very common. I mean, I think it's a pretty often thing that we've seen in general. And if you agree, Jess.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's something that we see all the time, and it's really human as well, you know, in the stress of the situation. Especially children are very good with tangible access. So this tangible stuff that we're talking about tonight are really picking their time to put you under stress. Children are very much aware that you know, there are some situations where we're more likely to cave, and they understand that their behavior kind of carries weight in this situation. Just quickly before we move on, we've actually got a question that we can clarify as we go as well. It says, when we do the ABC, we look at the consequences for the child. What does the child get from the behavior? That's exactly what we're saying. So we're looking at the consequences often drive the behavior and keep it going in the future and make it more likely to occur. But there are things we can do, both antecedent modifications and consequence modifications to help kind of reduce these sorts of behavior, but often it's the consequences that keep a behavior going. So yeah, that was a really good clarification for us to make. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Jess. So when we're thinking about what we can do to help nurture these replacement behaviors, we can look at something called antecedent consequences, which I will go over in the next slide. Kind of preempting the behavior before it actually happens and kind of warning your child before it happens. We can increase the access to desirable items during the scheduled times. We can allow and offer choices, which kind of gives the child a little bit more control over the decision-making process. And we can teach a child to ask rather than to take, if that's the scenario. And we can use the Premack Principle, or Grandma's Law, which is the first then, which I will also go over in a minute. So we're looking at what are antecedent consequences. This is basically that you can change what happens before the event to impact the behavior. So we've put here 4 different ways that we can really think about how we can use an antecedent consequence to impact the behavior. So first we can set the stage. So we can warn the child before the event is about to occur. Explain to them a step by step. The second antecedent consequence that we could use is alter the environment or the classroom structure. Some examples of this could be to minimize distraction, controlling the noise level, setting expectations, and creating predictability. We can allow for choices, so offer choices to make the child or student feel a sense of control. And the fourth idea is that we could set a timer. So we could use a visual timer to support the student to know how long they have with the item. So for example, visual timers are really great for iPad use, for technology use. So we can kind of set that boundary where we're not saying, no, you can't have it, but we're really putting a little bit of a time limit on it so that it doesn't create further behaviors down the way.
Yeah, and I agree with you there, Kellen. I love a timer, especially at home. They're a super easy, super simple thing that can really make a big difference, because it also signals to the child that the time's up with the item without you having to tell them. And so it kind of transfers that annoyance that you feel when you're told something's finished across to the timer rather than to a person. And it's a really simple, easy strategy. Just any cheap kitchen timer. We encourage families to keep one attached to the fridge, and you just use the timer as your kind of set strategy to help you kind of move through these situations.
Perfect. The other thing we could use is a Premack Principle, which is grandma's rule, which we have used, gone over in our past few webinars, but it's so common, and really uses first then. So first, for example, in this picture is first the puzzles, then we can have the iPad. Kind of sets the boundaries too, and really sets the expectation for the child before you even get to, the behavioral side. Do you have anything to add, Jess?
No, I think it's exactly it. I deal with a lot of younger children at home as well, and really adding a visual, because I think a lot of people are like, oh, my toddler can't understand that, but often it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be pictures you took on your phone and you just explain it, or it can even be some beautiful, hand drawing, or it doesn't have to be complex. It really needs to just kind of visually represent it for them. But that really works well for toddlers.
Mm-hmm. And finally, you want to rehearse the outcome you want. So collect the information, the ABC data, and work out why. Why is this behavior occurring, and what is the pattern we're seeing? You could even go further in depth into looking at the time of the day, when it happens. Is it during lunchtime? In a classroom, what time of the day is this occurring? So we can really see that pattern. Is it happening more and more often? And then we can really draw conclusions to that and create replacement behaviors. So we want to practice the replacement behaviors in low stress times. We can't teach these new replacement behavior skills when emotions are running high in either yourself or in the child. So it's a really good thing to remember when we're trying to teach replacement behaviors, is just pick and choose when you want to do them, and when the expectation is there. And thirdly, you want to praise your child if and when they use the replacement behavior you've taught, even if you've had to remind them, or sometimes we call it prompt them to use it. And a few areas to remember. We've been talking a little bit about functional behavior. So we always want to teach a child the functional behavior in the set. So if it's asking for help, if it's saying I need a break, if it's really teaching them to use those skills and those replacement behaviors in a functional manner. We want to teach the child to learn to wait. And always use positive praise. Focus on what they should be doing, not the negative behavior. So really catching them in the moment. I think often we talked a little bit about this last week, but in teaching, you can often catch your students in the moment, or you could be praising another student that's there for really following the correct rules and the behavior. Use grandma's rules. So first, then. And make situations predictable. So go ahead.
Well, isn't it, Kaylin? Like when you have a rule, follow through on it from both sides, both, rules and trust from children, and kind of decreasing this behavior really comes from when we say what we mean and we mean what we say. And I think it's a really common thing for parents that you get a bit frustrated and you just decide to cut the time short, or it can go the other way. The behavior starts to kick up a little bit and you're like, fine, just have another 10 minutes. But when we set expectations and when we follow through on them really consistently, we make the situation really predictable for our child. And in that predictability, we can really help diminish the kind of behavior and diminish the anxiety for the child as well. So yeah, the predictability is a really, really helpful one for giving up challenging items. Definitely.
And we want you to know that support is available. So it's important that you talk to your child's teacher or any other support professionals that may be involved with your child or your student. We're also available for consults to help further if you need more in-depth and specific support. You can book through our website, or you can drop us an email at our contact at hatchlingslondon.co.uk. Finally, I think we have quite a bit of time this evening, if Jess, you don't have anything more to add, for questions, which is great, because I think this is we've gotten a lot of amazing feedback, and thank you so much for those who have come on our webinars before. That more time would be helpful to kind of go through some of the questions and problem solve them and help you out with them. So if we're going to try to get to as many as we can, and if we don't, please contact us and we will do our best to support you where we can.
And I think, and just reading through the comments as they've been going in, and one wonderful ladies pointed out that visual timers can be really stressful for some children. And this is definitely a thing, when we're putting in place these tools, we want to really take into account the child that's in front of us. So if using a visual timer is going to cause more stress for your child, then please don't use it. We're not looking to make anybody more anxious. It's just there are lots and lots of tools in our toolbox of behavioral tactics to help support children. Not every tool fits every child, and that's something we really need to take into account. Just because we really like a visual timer or it works somewhere else really well, if it causes that level of anxiety and makes things harder for your student then or your child, then please don't do it. Please just be really mindful of each individual situation. We're not here to make things more anxiety inducing for kids. Definitely.
I think there's a question here. How do you use consequences for a teenager who cannot cope with no in any way, shape, or form? We see it in all ages, in all teenagers, young children, probably some adults. But I think the biggest thing is when we're looking at those antecedent consequences, could we consider maybe offering more choices? We could think about, how can you work in the process together with your teenager or your student to make choices and have them have a little bit more autonomy within the decision-making process. Often I think offering choices takes away from that battle of, between you and them about saying no and yes, and I don't want that. And it can often give them the choice there to make a, decision.
No, I think that's a great way of answering that, Kaylin, is really making sure that, you're giving them some control over the situation, because often it's the lack of the control that sends children and teenagers and anybody into that tailspin. If all you hear is a hard no and you don't know what else to expect, and it can really throw you off and it's really hard to recover from. There's a great one here. How could I use this for a preteen testing the boundaries, such as not wanting to come off the Xbox or wanting to finish a game when their time is up? So one thing that we need to be really mindful of as when we're kind of planning and using those, creating predictability within children's lives, and this counts for teenagers and pre-teenagers, is making sure that when we end a really enjoyable activity, that we're not going to a really terrible one. So if you've got a kind of previous history of having a challenging time when Xbox time is up, I would have something else that they can kind of transition to, and like Helen said, offer that choice. So you can tell I work with toddlers because I'm sure I'm about to offer two completely non-pre-T friendly suggestions. But, your Xbox time is finished. Do you want to kick the ball outside, or do you want to go and read a book in your room? If those are two things that the child, they're lower level than the Xbox, but they can't be things that are in the horrible kind of, now you need to go and brush your teeth type category. And that's something that we really find is that lots of children have problem, not necessarily with transitioning, but with the transition from a really highly preferred activity or object down to a really low preferred. It's that shock, just like the rest of us, when you're in something you really love and then you have to do something you really don't like. And introducing a kind of middle stage, which has a little bit of choice in there, is a really kind of often in a really effective way to kind of decrease that behavior, because they're not getting the shock of the kind of the ending of the activity. Caitlin, what do you feel?
No, I think you answered that perfectly. I think that's exactly the idea of really preempting things and trying to set the boundaries in a way that you can both work together. I think a lot of it is to minimize that, I guess, that battle that we often see in all age groups, because all of these things, keep in mind, are really for all age groups, even into adults. The 4 functions of behavior works with adults as well. And a lot of these strategies will even work, with toddlers, children, preteens, teenagers, all the way through. So it's just really adapting them to every situation and to the child.
Yeah, and just being really mindful of what the issues at that age group are. It's the same general principles, but obviously the manifestation looks a bit different between different age groups due to development and language and all of those sorts of things. But it's still the same principles. It's just slowing ourselves down and really taking the time to step ourselves through the whole situation. Got another one here. What about an older sibling who's trying to control the play at home with a younger sibling who is happy to let the older child initiate games, etc.? I'll let you start with this one, Caitlin.
I think we see that a lot. I think it's great that they're playing together, but at the same time, the control is probably what's driving a little bit of the issues between them, and having that control over the game or what they're playing is probably what we need to reduce. So kind of thinking, I think we could probably look a little bit about using first then. We could still offer choices, and we could help the child, I guess, if the other child's happy to follow along, we could probably help to try to make the play more appropriate. I guess it depends to, what is the play? Is it age appropriate in terms of that? We work with a lot of siblings, and the age gap sometimes can be an issue, given that younger siblings might not play the same games as older siblings, and if it's actually causing a behavior to occur. Jess, do you have anything to add to this one?
I think also is part of maybe what's going on is the lack of turn taking on the older siblings' part, right? And so creating quick opportunities. I think that a lot of the time what we see when we see with siblings, with an older and a younger one, is that the older sibling is very used to being in charge and isn't used to the idea that the younger sibling is also a kind of peer of theirs, and that they can be allowed to turn and allowed to initiate. And especially lots of younger siblings adore their older siblings and are very happy to go along. But obviously we don't want younger siblings to just be a doormat to their older siblings. And so it's creating some really short opportunities for turn taking that go really positively. So I don't know how old these children are, but it's creating some very quick ones. Pop-up pirate, or what's that crocodile one with the teeth? That's one of my favorites. And what it is just getting children to turn take and offering them some choices. So you might say, okay, we've got pop-up pirate and we've got the crocodile game. To the older sibling, okay, first we're gonna let baby sibling choose a game, and then you can choose a game. And what they are is they're really quick turnarounds to change that established behavior, because especially when children are really kind of entrenched in a pattern of behavior, it's so hard to establish that quick change. So using really simple games that have a really quick turnaround is a really nice way to do that, and just using that first then language. I understand it's really tricky, you really want to make all the choices, but this time we're going to be amazing big sibling and we're going to let younger sibling choose. Oh yeah, great choice. Play the game quickly, and then I'm so impressed how you let your sibling lead. Your turn to choose. And you can do a bigger game that's kind of more them led then as well. And what you're doing is creating that association that when we let our sibling do things and make choices and initiate, positive things come to us as well, because all humans are kind of a little bit self-driven, especially young children. That's the way they're programmed. And so just allowing for that quick opportunity, that quick turnaround, I think is often the way we kind of kickstart these. It's a really, really common scenario. And definitely, I think the person here has also commented that it's getting more controlling due to the family shielding and losing control of their own world. And that's absolutely right. And it's really talking to your child about those situations. Hopefully in the next few weeks, we're going to be doing one on emotions and behavior, and really learning how to kind of merge the two worlds. I think people think of behavior as quite like tough and rules and things, but there are really empathetic ways we can recognize the stresses that our children are having. But we can also, put in place those boundaries and those rules. I understand it's really tricky. It's going to be a really short game. And so you set the expectations, set the scene, you talk about it beforehand, and then you play it out. And I think we talked about this in one of our earlier slides. It's that whole rehearse the outcome. So it doesn't need to be a perfect scenario. It doesn't need to be an amazing, whole complicated game. It can be really, really short and sharp. It can, No, I think that would be the way we would start things with any clients of ours, is we would encourage it to be a short, sharp game, followed by a longer game led by the older sibling after the younger siblings had their go. But it's a really challenging situation.
I
think we've
had
go. Sorry. When are your other webinars? So we hold all of our webinars on Wednesday nights. So the live recording is always between 8:30 and 9, or 8:30 and just after 9, depending on the weeks and what we've got going on. But this is our regular slot set aside. So they'll always be in this particular time on Wednesdays. And all of our other pre-recorded ones from previous weeks are available on our YouTube channel. This is number 5. So we've done one on returning to nursery or school, and we've done kind of a general overview on behavior, and then the previous ones have been on escape and attention and tangible, and next week we'll be doing sensory seeking behavior or sensory aversive behavior as well. But we've got tons of topics coming in at the moment, so feel free to keep sending them in, and we will very slowly, week by week, chip away through them all. Do we have what else have we got here? How do you book? We do online consults, which you can book through our website if you send an email to the contact. We're more than happy to get back to you. Sometimes it's a really simple question we can answer over email. Sometimes you can book a short consult with us online. We operate primarily out of London and West London. So if you're in the area, we are doing some limited open air consults, so in people's gardens and parks and things at the moment. But obviously we will just be very, very conscious of our behaviour in the current climate. So that's that one. Are the webinars always free? Yes, they are. Yeah, we will always keep these short half-an-hour webinars free. We just think it's really fun information that we'd like more people to know. So yeah, that's definitely the plan. Any book recommendations?
I think if any book recommendations, perhaps if you contact us, we might be able to. And there's lots of books on behavior, so we might need to clarify kind of what you're looking for. So if you contact us via our contact email, we will get back to you with a list of a few books that might suit your criteria.
Yeah, so just let us know kind of the age range, whether you're a teacher or a parent. If there's a specific thing that you want taken into consideration, we can see what we can send your way. We also on our website have a resources page, which has links to tons of great organizations that have really good quality information. There's some really underutilized resources out there for behavior and development. So a lot of them are American kind of based organizations, but the information is obviously just as valid here. And there's one called 0 to 3, which covers 0 to 3 years. Does a lot on behavior and development. And there's the speech and language societies. They've got tons of fantastic information coming out of them. And the Bezos Foundation does one called Room, which is again some really great activities and practical tips on development and behavior and using everyday opportunities to help support your child. So there are tons and tons of things out there. Anything that we think is really good quality that we find in web form, we stick on our resources page. So you're more than welcome to go and check that out. We're always updating with whatever we kind of pop across on the internet as the week goes on. I think, unless anybody's typing more questions, I think we've managed to get through everybody this week.
It's fantastic.
Brilliant. We'll give it another minute or two in case anybody wants to ask us anything else. But otherwise, I think we've managed to get through everything. But I'm just going to sit here quietly for a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this week, I think the most common issue that we're seeing at the moment is kind of possessiveness about objects at the moment at home. Obviously, things are pretty like home focused at the moment, so that's a lot of what we're seeing. And we're seeing kind of the age-old issue of iPads and technology. And these are the kind of resources that we're using with our families, is just really making sure you talk to your child, that we set expectations and boundaries, and that we're really consistent. But I hope that you've all had, I think that's it for questions. So I think we'll wrap up.
Yes, and so we will be sending out a short survey, and if you could complete this in your spare time, we use this data just to improve our webinars and deliver the content that you see. Along with this, once you complete it, we will send our free resource for the week within the next 24 hours, and we really appreciate you filling them out. Lastly, next week we'll be dealing with sensory seeking behavior, our fourth function of behavior. You can visit us at www.hatchlingslondon.co.uk, and our YouTube site, as we said, we post all of our videos up there. If you visit our website, we have the YouTube link on there as well, or you can go to Hatchlings London on YouTube, and please follow us on Facebook as well. Thank you so much and have a great evening.
Thanks.